George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, especially with her being from Grand Rapids, born and raised, we are seeing now where there's 18 countries and every state has had a protest for social and racial justice, including the 54 countries in Africa that has enticed the United Nations to look into the U.S. for its treatment towards people of color. So this has, when I think about the current state of this movement, including the current lynchings that people are trying to recategorize as suicides, it is infuriating, to be frank. We know that things don't have to move slow. When we want to make changes, we make changes quickly when it's deemed appropriate by those who are in control of those systems. But we also know that people want to get this right. Right now, I think my personal feelings around this movement, on top of that, is actually what I call has been the last 2 weeks has been the Spirit Week of Black Lives Matters, which means that people are hopping onto this cause and this wave for fear of being a backlash for their stance of the black dollar, but don't really incorporate us in their structures for as far as leadership positions, board positions with voice and power. So it's multi-layered for me. I am extremely persistent on keeping this height and this movement and this pressure going. This isn't a Spirit Week for me, when most of them look like you and I as far as our skin tone. But people are dying at high rates. And since his death, there has been additional, someone told me, 120 deaths since George Floyd. And so it makes you wonder when people get upset more about buildings and destruction of property versus the destruction of a life, it lets you know where the value is placed. And to me, that's dangerous because that sends a very direct message. Is this something that we are accustomed and used to? Yes. Should we be used to it? No. Are there some social and mental impacts of this movement that I think has yet to be discovered, and further depth around the social weight of that? No. To me personally, it's taxing. Being in corporate America, along with knowing what's going on, because it impacts me. We are putting ourselves in performance mode, meaning I am still expected to respond to emails and get out those memos and smile in these meetings, yet I am hurting from the aspect of how I am being treated on the daily. I'm consciously aware. And so when you think about the impact of that physically, mentally, and emotionally, it's heavy. And I think there is just for reform. There is just for a mental health crisis. I am pleased with the bold mayors who have stepped up to declare racism as a public health issue, because to me that is about providing services to the mental aspect of that that is going to be needed as we are constantly being fed about these killings, and this has become almost numbing and normal in a sense of what we're seeing on display. And so it's a way of emotion. Some days I am beyond upset, and some days I am exhausted from the weight of it. And so to me it's multi-layered, but it is a heavy situation. Thinking about that future movement and what that looks like and what we're doing, it's really, I don't think there's one way approach to this. I think it is a multitude of multiple approaches. I think it needs to be continuously in the faces of people, especially lawmakers, as we continue to develop new policies or eradicate old policies to make sure that we are on the right path. I think it is about making sure that we have allies to go along with this, but also teaching what is allyship. And what does that mean? That does not mean when you're an ally that you're centering yourself upon a movement, but you're also taking the back seat and letting others take the lead as we see what's best for us. I also think it is within the Black community for us to really define what it is that we want and have a form of unity in regards to what is it that we're asking for, what we need. I think every area is going to be a little bit uniquely different for the needs, but however, it is a universal concept as far as across America about what we need and what we are desiring from these changes. I think the protests are needed. I think disruption of comfort is needed. I think the continuation of videos coming out and calling out things that are not right is needed. We are seeing by the power of not only the black dollar, but the power of the collective and black voice and what that impacts. We have seen corporations who have turned around statements in a matter of hours or minutes because they were called out on something that they should have known better to do. We're seeing that. And so I think it's multiple avenues that play into what's needed to keep this at the forefront and put the pressure on what needs to happen. I think we have had great leadership here in the state of Michigan with our governor. She has been very much so in the forefront as far as making sure that there is a committee that address disparities within the black and brown communities. I think that is a nice step, that is a needed step, and that is something that I would encourage most other states to adopt and to make sure that we're doing a lens and a deep dive into the disparities and what's causing the disparities. I think the city of Grand Rapids has done a great job as far as the Third Ward Economic Fund, making sure that there's money going towards communities that have once been deprived of such. We have GRAB. We have a lot of different things here that are putting forth efforts towards social and racial justice form that needs to continue to happen. And so efforts of that is needed. And I'm going to still stand firm on my belief that the consistency of making sure that there's multiple ways of how we're approaching this is key to making sure that this stays in the forefront, especially in this climate as we are getting close to people returning back to the workforce and you're not forced to sit and watch and forced to be preoccupied with work. I want that energy, that same energy that we've had for these last couple months where we have been in our homes and looking to continue to be a force to be reckoned with, because that was real allyship. That was what we're seeing the movement, and it's going to take more of that bold, aggressive leadership, in my personal opinion, to make sure that we are changing the narrative, but also making sure that policy follows that narrative, to make sure that we don't end up in a situation like this again. I don't want to continue to have this conversation in 2021 and beyond. This is something that we have the power to fix now and have that impact on. And so that's how I feel concerning what's current state and then moving forward.